Hello and welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Lauren and today I'm looking more into the Backrooms. This is again Film Theory's series of videos. I think I said that right. Film Theory's series of videos about the Backrooms. So again, my current plan is to get Matt Pat's take on all of this because it might help me understand a little bit better or not. And then I will be moving on to like watching other Backrooms playthroughs and also more of Kane Pixel's other spooky stuff. But I wanted to get like the lore of the Backrooms down first before I jump over into some of the other stuff. So that's the current plan. I'm looking forward to this. This will again hopefully help me understand a little bit better what the actual lore of the story is. Because it did confuse me a wee bit. Let's begin.
Looks like they came back with some new footage. Let's take a look.
Inverted turn sign.
Now it starts to come together. That's it, huh? Well, it's enough. Round up the troops. We've got a lot to discuss. Things just went from bad to worse. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that wants to no-clip into your subscription feed. Today, I once again find myself trapped in the endlessly soggy hallways of the Backrooms, the analog horror series produced by Kane.
It keeps mentioning the soggy carpets, and I always forget about that, because, like, again, I would not have known that just from looking. He keeps bringing it up, and I'm like, it's just gross every time he says it.
Pixels and available right here on YouTube.com for the low price of free. The last time we enrobed ourselves in its putrid yellow wallpaper, we concluded that the world of the Backrooms seems to function a lot like a level map in a video game. You know how in a video game there's a set map that you're able to explore, and that there are walls or invisible boundaries that make sure that you stay within the acceptable area of play? Well, the way I see it, that's the real world here in Kane's series, the bounded area that humans are allowed to play in. However, video games also have tons of things that are hidden in spaces outside the boundaries of those levels. Unused ideas, spare assets, cut content. You want to know why FNAF's Security Breach's file size was so huge when the thing first came out? Something like 80 gigs of content? Well, it was just piles and piles of cut stuff. Full floors of geometry that weren't accessible in the course of normal gameplay, but hadn't been removed from the game's files. And that, my theorists, are what I expect the Backrooms are. The cut content, the spare assets, the AI-generated worlds that didn't quite make the cut for reality. Last time, we proposed that somehow the company Async was able to use electromagnetism to tap into those parts of the map, the ones that exist outside the boundaries of reality, beyond the parts of the world that we're meant to see, giving us the various repetitive corridors of the Backrooms as we know them. Now, since the release of that last theory, Kane has come out with 3 new videos. The first is Pitfalls, where one of Async's researchers descends deeper than ever before in the Backrooms, only to discover an entire underground city. The next was Report, where we see the immediate aftermath of that incident and Async sealing the entrances to the Backrooms. And finally, there was Presentation, where we see how Async pitched this thing as the solution to an increasingly overpopulated world, but how they ultimately lost their government contracts when a researcher accidentally causes a lockdown of the facility. All 3 of these new videos are full of lore.
Okay, so I remember all of those videos. I didn't fully put together that the reason that they lost the contract was because the researcher caused the lockdown. I kind of just thought it was they couldn't prove that it was actually going to work. You know, I thought kind of it's like, well, somebody is lost. I thought it was more that people got lost in there and trapped, and people were going missing in the back rooms, and the government was like, it's not worth the risk. That's what I thought. I didn't realize it had anything to do with a lockdown.
Or details. But to me, the biggest revelation to come out of these uploads is that the Backrooms aren't just responsible for warping physical reality, they're also warping time itself. Attention all you partygoers, I think I've cracked exactly how and why people are no-clipping into this place. But enough talking, friends. It's time to go get lost in these endless hallways of lore.
We knew that it was time though, because the guy we'd already seen the video, hadn't we, of him vanishing, and then like the people vanishing, and then him finding the seemingly closed facility later. Because that's what I thought. I knew that it was time distortion immediately. Okay. You know what? Maybe I'm remembering videos out of order or something.
Now, despite the video game concept of no clipping being a key part of the original creepypasta that this series is based on, Kane has yet to explicitly reference any video game terminology. However, after watching this new slate of videos, I'm more convinced than ever that we're still on the right track. For example, let's take a closer look at Pitfalls. In it, we follow researcher Marvin Lee as he falls to a deeper level of the facility, only to discover a full neighborhood underground. And I do mean full. Streetlights, houses, trees, all of it.
Stars.
Well, all of it except for people. There are no signs of life here. So either an entire empty town fell into the Backrooms, or this is yet another example of an unused or incomplete level. And when we do get to enter one of the houses, things are just slightly off inside. There are 6 inverted street signs just hanging out in the middle of an empty room, almost like a level designer intended to put them out on the street, but instead just moved them out of sight into the house. Making things even stranger though, the house has a single hallway leading straight back. It's like the uncanny valley of architecture. It's clearly meant to be a house, but it just doesn't nail it.
So there are houses like that though. I think in New Orleans there's a lot of those shotgun houses that like it does go just straight back, and it's just like room after room after room, and you have to go through each room to get to the next one, which isn't the design of the outside of this house, so I don't think that was on purpose, but that is a style of house, just going straight on back with, you just go up, so like to get to the second bedroom, you have to go through the first one, you know, and sometimes to get to the bathroom, you have to go through a bedroom. Like, it was a spacing issue, but which is why they designed the houses like that. But I'm just saying, it is a kind of house that exists, kind of. And again, this one is just a hallway, so it's a little different. But still.
Almost like it'd been designed not by a human, but rather by an AI. Something that's trying to mimic a human home, but without fully understanding the flow and function of the various rooms and hallways. But of course, it doesn't end there. If you've followed the Backrooms at all, you know that Kane likes to hide a bunch of secrets in the descriptions of his videos, and 2 of the new uploads, Report and Presentation, link to secret unlisted uploads.
See, I didn't know that. So, if you all want me to go back and watch all of those secret ones that I didn't see before, I will go and do that. I'll just make a video and watch all of the secret stuff that might help me actually understand more.
First of these is titled This. I'm just gonna call it Numbers, because saying a long string of random digits every time is gonna be a pain. This Numbers video seems to be footage from a traffic camera on a highway. Nothing too out of the ordinary, right? But then, about 22 seconds in, we see a car no clip through the ground. Not only does this tell us that literally anything can wind up in the Backrooms, including large vehicles like cars, but I think we might be able to figure out who was actually in that car. Back in the upload Missing Persons, we see posters for multiple people who have disappeared since the opening of the Backrooms. One such poster is for Margaret Watson, the only poster of the bunch that describes not only her physical appearance, but also her car. Her car is a 1987 Ford Escort. And wouldn't you know it, but when you compare the footage from Numbers to an 87 Ford Escort, they have the same boxy appearance. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is meant to be footage of Margaret Watson no clipping into the Backrooms on December 2nd, 1989, along with her car. But that's not all that we...
Is that the car that we saw crashed into the wall then? Because like she would have no clipped into the reality, still driving, and then just slammed into the wall, right?
You can get out of the secret upload. The digits in the title of Numbers obviously aren't meant to be random here, but what are they? All our usual suspects are out. Ciphers don't seem to work, it's not a phone number, and it doesn't seem to be long enough for hex code either. Nope, Kane decided to get
Is it lat long, maybe?
even more creative with this one. That series of 13 numbers is actually an international standard book number, an ISBN. These are unique numeric codes used to identify books, kind of like a fingerprint for a book, and 978-0415-263-573 is linked to a book written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, the literary classic, The Yellow Wallpaper. Yellow wallpaper, you say?
What?
If you've never had to read this for school, or even if you did have to read it for school and you didn't, this was a landmark piece of feminist literature about a woman slowly going insane after being forced to stay in a room with ugly yellow wallpaper.
I think I have heard of this story, actually. Like, now that he's described it, it sounds familiar. I never had to read it for school, but I also definitely did the thing a lot where we were supposed to read something for school and I just didn't. I mean, the first time I did it was in 7th grade. We were reading The Taming of the Shrew, and I just really hated it. I didn't like how they treated Kate at all. So I stopped reading that book, and I still it's the only work of Shakespeare's that I have not read. The only one. I still haven't read it. But then like when I hit like 11th grade, I was in AP English, and for whatever reason, I hated every single book that they tried to make us read. So I would read like a chapter or two, and then be like, you know what? Oh, well, I guess I'll take a B. And I started just doing Spark Notes for everything. I did get those Bs, though. There were certain things that I was like, because I'm not reading the book, I'm not actually going to know the answer to several of these questions, but oh, well, I don't want to read The Scarlet Letter. You know, I hated it. I don't want to read Red Badge of Courage. I don't remember. I think The Great Gatsby is the only other book that I remember that we read that year that I also didn't read. So I was like, no, just not going to. Point being, I did it a lot in school where I just didn't read the book we were supposed to for English class. But I was very good at bullshitting. So I still did okay.
She begins to see moving shapes and people within the wallpaper, and she believes that the ugly yellow color stains everything that it touches. By the end, the woman has peeled all the wallpaper off the walls trying to help the person that's trapped inside, only for the woman to then believe that she's become that person. Now, there's little direct correlation between the short story and the Backrooms videos, but a lot of its ideas are clearly present here. For example, as we see in Pitfalls, the bacteria monsters can mimic the voices of their victims.
Hey! Can you hear me?
The monster can also infect the corpses after killing them, like we see with a victim named Nicholas Bolton in the video autopsy report. In a way, they're almost replacing their victims. The monsters are trapped in the Backrooms, like the people in the wallpaper from our short story. Their next step then should be trying to get out of the wallpaper, out of the Backrooms, and out into the real world where they can infect more.
Right.
Framing this in a
I was wondering about that during the course of the entire video. Like, can they get out? The door when Async was working on stuff was just open all the time. So like, what was actually stopping the bacteria monsters from just leaving?
In our simulation theory, it's almost like this is a computer virus infecting reality, corrupting it, just like the ugly yellow color of the wallpaper staining everything that it touches in the short story. Now, while all of that's certainly interesting, and I always love a good excuse to work in a literary reference, it's the second secret video that really starts to break this thing wide open, and it all boils down to The Simpsons. This one is simply called The Simpsons, and it, fittingly enough, features a clip from The Simpsons, specifically the episode Bart Gets Hit by a Car.
I'd like to talk to you about bringing legal action against the fiend who did this to your boy.
Feels super random, right? I'm just sitting here watching a Simpsons episode now. However, the clip glitches out about 35 seconds in, and suddenly we're sitting here watching a Spanish commercial for a cough medication named Dimacol. And while I could certainly stand here and draw parallels between a medicine for cough syrup and a mutated bacteria monster running around, I don't think it's the content of these clips that's important here. Instead, I suspect it's the timeline of their release. You see, Bart Gets Hit by a Car premiered in 1991. This timing makes a lot of sense. Up to this point, practically all the videos of Kane's Backroom series have been dated from the late 80s or early 90s. But the Dimacol commercial really stands out in this context. According to its archive on YouTube, this thing didn't hit airwaves until about 2000. What I suspect is that async opening portals to the Backrooms temporarily messes with the flow of time. Here, that Simpsons clip from the early 90s is
Okay, so it's messing with time not just inside the back rooms, it's messing with it outside too. That's wild.
interrupted by a commercial from the future, only for things to return to normal after Async's experiment is done. Does it sound crazy? Yeah, it does, but it
that's
shouldn't.
cool,
Time
though.
clearly works differently in the Backrooms, and this isn't the only example we have. Here in the Pitfalls video, as Marvin moves further into the hallway in the back of that weird house, the camera glitches just a bit, and if you listen closely, you can hear something playing in the background.
Repeat, Marvin, do you copy?
Did you hear it? It's really hard to make out, but if you listen carefully, it's actually a news broadcast from when Cuba and the United States reopened diplomatic relations. Let's compare.
Will make the trip to the U.S. Do you think that your current president, President Castro, will come visit the United States?
Repeat, Marvin, do you copy?
That specific broadcast, it didn't happen until July of 2015. The date of Pitfalls, meanwhile, is 1990. In this short scene, we're actually hearing news from 25 years in the future. But it doesn't just stop at news broadcasts or commercials airing decades out of their own time. We see the physical interference of time as well. As I mentioned earlier, the video presentation shows us Async losing their government contract with the Department of Energy because of an emergency lockdown. The thing that causes the lockdown? An Async researcher accidentally enters the control center for the Backrooms. Not all that big of a deal, right? Wrong. You see, it's the same researcher that saw his team glitch out and disappear all the way back in informational video. At the end of
Okay, yeah, so that's the one where I think that's where I posited that time travel was happening, in that one. Okay, I mean, maybe that's just because I don't know. Okay. Well, I got there a long time. I got there a long time ago within the Backrooms, but I hadn't considered outside that it was outside was affected too, or like you were hearing stuff from outside of time. And I still didn't realize that the lockdown is why they lost the contract. I thought that it was costing too much money and they hadn't figured anything out yet.
that upload, we see him open the async control room and set off the red alert. But here's the thing. This guy disappeared on February 29th, 1990. His reappearance and presentation is on May 8th, 1990, over 2 months later. But clearly he hasn't been wandering around for that long. He's somehow been transported into the future. This can even go so far as to explain a discrepancy that I've called out in past videos. In the very first upload of the series, we see a clapperboard that clearly marks the date as July 1990 something. But the date in the description of found footage reads as September 23rd, 1996, a date that's just completely different from what we saw written on that clapperboard. When we first covered the Backrooms, I figured this was just an innocent mistake, you know, small error in dates during a point in the series when dates didn't matter all that much. But now it is clearly setting up the idea that time works differently within the Backrooms. But that then begs the question, how? Why is time acting crazy, and more importantly, why now? Well, we might actually have an answer for that. You see, one of the secret uploads for the series is an archive file from March 11th, 1990. In it, we see the rooms being flooded, which would obviously explain the soggy floors. But more importantly, this is where we first learn about the concept of null zones. Now, if you don't know what these are, yeah, you probably shouldn't. They haven't been explained at all, and they've only been referenced once in the main series as a passing comment in Pitfalls.
But what if Miller's right about the null zone?
In the original Creepypasta's lore, there were things called null rooms, but Kane's interpretation of the entire Backrooms idea has taken a lot of liberties, and his null zones don't seem to relate all that much to null rooms in any way outside of just sharing the word null. Instead, basically all we have to go off of is this one image. It's a bit difficult to make out due to the quality of the video, but I think it reads, due to the elevation discrepancy between panel 225 and 224, a null KX field is created. It's not much to go off of, but at least it's something. And looking back at Pitfalls, things start to make a bit more sense. Marvin asks about the null zones after entering an area that's at a slightly offset elevation. Look at the difference in heights between the hallway and the neighborhood. And that news broadcast from the future, the camera
I just thought it was like behind a wall. I was like imagining it more like a garage door that got stuck, you know?
picks it up only as Marvin crosses the threshold of a single stair in the hallway.
Oh, that's fully what I thought it was. I didn't realize it was just a change in elevation, because I remember being really freaked out that I thought that that guy was going to get like crushed by I thought it was going to fall on him. I thought it was like a door. Okay, so this, all right, different. It's very different than I thought.
Time we see an elevation discrepancy, he is crossing a null zone. See, the phrase null KX field caught my eye for a lot of reasons. Seemed like a jumping off point that Kane put in so theorists like us could discover something about the world that he's building. So let's break down what the phrase could actually mean bit by bit, starting with null. In physics, a null is a point where two opposing quantities cancel each other out. Basically, when two equal waves meet, there's going to be a point where they perfectly reflect each other, thereby canceling each other out. The channel Electro Boom here on YouTube demonstrates this really well using sound waves.
Right now only the first speaker is on, and I'm gonna stay out of its way and turn the second speaker on. Now I turn the speaker off again.
The horrible noise.
Off. On.
So whatever a null KX field is, it's canceling something out, some sort of a wave. And I
Okay.
have a strong suspicion as to what those waves might be. Electromagnetic waves. We see what appear to be electromagnetic tubes making a ball disappear in the video prototype, and we hear talk about magnetic field distortions in other uploads like Third Test. So it seems like a solid hypothesis. Moving on to the KX here, we can assume that the X is a reference to the X-axis. You know, X, Y, and Z axes on a three-dimensional
sure.
graph? Well, that explains our X, which leaves us with K as some sort of a constant. I dug around for formulas that use the specific KX nomenclature, and while Hooke's law for the potential energy of a spring was certainly a possibility, felt like an odd fit considering the material we're working with here. It seemed far more likely that the KX here was a reference to the numerous formulas for electromagnetic field equations that use KX as a dimensional point. And here's the thing, a lot of our everyday life can be traced
Okay.
back to electromagnetic waves. Light, heat, electricity, radio,
I would not have considered going into the science aspect of it all, which is probably why I cannot be a theorist. I would not have considered to look at physics.
X-rays, microwaves, all of them have a place on the electromagnetic spectrum, and objects that use or give off those things also tend to create their own EM waves. Your phone generates EM waves. Your car, EM thanks to its alternator. What's more, every person that we've seen no clip into or experience strangeness in the Backrooms has been using technology that uses EM waves. Kane, Marvin, and the researcher from Informational Video were all using electronic cameras to write information onto magnetic tapes. And Margaret Wilson, she was driving her car when she no-clipped through. What if people are no-clipping into the Backrooms because they're unlucky enough to be in a spot where the electromagnetic wave from the real world happens to meet one from the Backrooms, thereby creating a null zone, canceling each other out, and letting the person slip through?
And if it fluctuates. But there's a video later though that the girl which hasn't come out yet, but that the girl like taped off the section of her garage that was constant. So it's like, but nobody else fell through with after Kane, or none of the other cars went through after Margaret. So that means sometimes they're constant and sometimes they're not, maybe?
Electromagnetism is also one of the four fundamental forces of nature that make up our world. If you think of it back in the terms of a simulated reality of a video game, it's almost like an integral part of the game engine code that runs our universe. And I think that's literally the case here within the universe of the Backrooms. Through their experiments with electromagnetism, Async has glitched their own reality, like a speedrunner that intentionally manipulates the RAM of an old game to tweak the code and teleport to where they shouldn't be. But this has broken the rest of the game, the rest of reality. And now that part of the game engine is glitched. Players are randomly no-clipping into places they shouldn't be, or hearing audio from faraway futures as they wander into these null zones.
Okay.
More and more, the world of the Backrooms is starting to sound like the world's jankiest MMO RPG. And just like with a video game, exploiting a few glitches here and there can really cause the game's stability to collapse, which means it's likely that this is just the beginning. The physical world and time itself will become more and more unstable as new rooms are open and as more people clip in. What started as a high-tech way to expand your garage storage or squeeze in a few extra cubicles will suddenly put the entire world at risk. The lines between the real and the simulated will start to blur to the point that, just like with the woman in the yellow wallpaper, we're all infected. We're all going a little mad. We're all the ones trapped inside of the walls. But hey, if you've ever felt like you were glitching out or that you couldn't trust the reality of your computer screen, you might have just been using an unencrypted
Alright.
internet connection.
This was
Those
from a long
things
time
are dangerous,
ago, so.
friends. Every time you connect to public Wi-Fi at an airport,
All right, great. So this is a ad that there's sponsorship from him. He's for ExpressVPN. I'm sure you can take a peek at that on his channel. But again, this video is from over a year ago, so I doubt that the link still works. But you should absolutely still go and check out Film Theorists. We will miss Matt Pat sorely when he leaves. But okay. I feel like I figured out some stuff in this one. And I'm curious to see where he goes next. I really am fascinated by this whole world, and I'm really glad he's telling me about some of these extra videos that I did not see. I did not know they existed. So thanks, Matt Pat and Film Theorists, for cluing me in on some of this stuff. Cannot wait to continue. And then again, after I do, I'm going to pop back into some other Backrooms material and some more Kane Pixels videos in general. There's a couple of like the oldest one or something. The oldest something, I think is what it's called. I know which one I want to watch next, so I know it's coming. So thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.